Okay, so this should be a really quick lesson because we had that longer lesson on equations, and absolute value equations follow a similar pattern. We're talking about absolute values. I know you've seen it. You got the two straight lines with something inside the line, and we're going to talk about how to solve them. So absolute value, what we're talking about is the distance from zero on a number line. So absolute value solutions are always positive. Um, and when we're talking about, say we have the absolute value of x equals 7, and we want to know what are the possible values for x, well, because they're always positive, if x was 7, it would equal 7. But also, if x was -7, it would equal 7. And so that's what we mean by it's a distance. We can't have a negative distance. It's just saying that, say we're going in the opposite direction, it's still 7 away. Another thing you should know is because it's always positive, I cannot have x, the absolute value of x equals -4. When I've isolated this absolute value and all I have is whatever's inside the absolute value equal to something, it can't be equal to something that's negative, because no matter what is left inside here, it's going to have a positive outcome. So we would just say there is no solution, right? I wrote down some rules here so that I didn't have to spend a lot of time writing them down. I could just go over them with you, and they're the steps to solve absolute value equations. I highly recommend that you, if you're taking notes like you should be when you're doing this Edpuzzle, that you pause this and write them down. But as it stands, I'm just going to go over them with you. The steps to solving absolute value equations are: 1, you want to isolate the absolute value expression. You want it to be the only thing left on that side of the equal sign. Number 2, you want to create two cases. You want to set the inside of the absolute value equal to both the positive and negative value of whatever number's on the opposite side of that equal sign. Then you want to solve both equations. And lastly, you want to check for extraneous solutions. Now, extraneous solutions are solutions that aren't going to work in the original equation. If you plug it in, it's not going to be true. So with that being said, those are the rules, the steps you want to follow when you're doing this. But for the rest of this, we're just going to do sample problems so that you can see how they solve. All right. So I am going to try and get all this out of there for you. And say I have the example, the absolute value of x minus 9 equals 5. Now I'm going to start by writing two separate equations. Now it says I have to isolate the absolute value expression. Well, it's already isolated. It's the only thing left on this side of the equal sign is what's inside the absolute value. So next I need to create two equations, two cases, right? One is going to take whatever's inside here, x minus 9, and set it equal to 5. The other is going to take whatever's in there, x minus 9, and set it to equal to -5. And then we're going to solve both equations. This equation is going to have two solutions, right? Here I'm going to add 9 to both sides, and I get x equals 14. That is one of my solutions. The other, I'm going to add 9, and I get x equals 4, and that is my other solution. Now, when it says check for extraneous solutions, which is our last step, right, it just means plugging it in to the original equation and seeing if it fits, right? Well, here I have 14 minus 9. Well, 14 minus 9 is plus 5, and plus 5 equals, the absolute value of plus 5 equals 5. Here I have 4 minus 9, well, that's -5, and the absolute value of -5 is also 5. So both of these solutions work. right? Now this is a simple example, and so we're going to get a little bit more complex in our examples, and do a few that actually have to have some stuff done to them, right? So go with example number 2, and we've got, say, y minus 1, the absolute value y minus 1 plus 17 equals 23. Now this isn't super complex. Remember, the first step says that we have to isolate the absolute value expression. So I want this to be the only thing on this side of the equal sign. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 17 from both sides. And I will get the absolute value of y minus 1 equals 23 minus 17 is 6. And then I can go ahead and start over, right, with the two equations. I have nothing but the absolute value on this side of the equal sign, so I don't have to do anything else for that. Now I can just set up my two equations, right? One would be y minus 1 equals 6. The other would be y minus 1 equals negative 6. And then we're just going to solve each one. Add 1, and we get y equals 7. And we're going to add 1 here and add 1 here, and we get y equals negative 5. Now, I can have a negative solution for an absolute value equation once I set them up, right? It just means that we have to go over 5 in the negative direction to get 5 away, to get that length away from 0. I'm going to do a few more of these. I can plug this in, right? I can go, if I plug this in, I get 7 minus 1. Well, that's 6 plus 17 does equal 23. If I plug in negative 5, I get an absolute value of negative 6, but that comes out positive 6. When I add it to 7, I get 23. So both of these solutions are true. Let's look at another example. Say 16 times the absolute value of x minus 5 equals negative 32. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to pull off anything that's not inside that absolute value. And I have 16 multiplied to it. So I'm going to divide both sides by 16, right? And when I do this, I am left with the absolute value of x minus 5 equals negative 2. Now, remember, I told you that anything inside an absolute value cannot equal a negative. If all I have here is this absolute value on this side of the equal sign and it is set equal to something negative, we just have no solution. Let's see, I'm going to look for one more to do and then turn it all over to you guys, okay? Let's make it a little more complicated. I can't talk. It's the end of the day. I'm doing this at the end of the day today. So what if I have 2 times the absolute value of x plus 8 equals 14x? Well, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to follow the same rules. I'm going to make it so that the only thing on this side of the equation here is the x plus 8. Right now, I have 2 times the absolute value of x plus 8. And so if it's times the absolute value, I'm just going to divide by 2 to get rid of that 2, right? These will cancel, and I'm left with the absolute value of x plus 8 equals 7x, right? So now I'm going to set up 2 equations, just like I did before, right? One is going to be x plus 8 equals 7x. And the other one is going to be x plus 8 equals negative 7x. So now we have to think in terms of like terms a little bit. I've got these x values. So when I solve for x, it's going to be a little bit different this time, right? I am going to go ahead and move the x value from this side over just because it's an easier number to deal with and I won't have a negative x at the end. So I'm going to go minus x, and I'll be left with 8 equals 6x. Now there's nothing wrong with that, right? We want to know what x equals, but right now we know what 6x equals. We got 6 multiplied times that x. And so I'm just going to divide this by 6, and I'm going to divide this by 6. These will cancel, and I'll be left with 8/6 equals x. Now, keep in mind, I cannot leave that fraction that way. Both of those are even numbers. It would kill me to leave them that way. So I'm going to reduce the fraction. Everything here is divisible by 2, so I'm going to divide them by 2. I'm going to write it in this order as x equals 8 divided by 2 is 4. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So I've got x equals 4/3 on that side, right? This one we're gonna behave similarly, right? I'm going to go ahead and subtract x and subtract x from this side as well, right? That's going to give me 8 equals minus 8x, right? I have this negative 8 multiplied to my x, so I'm going to go ahead and divide this by negative 8, which means I have to divide this by negative 8 too, because I can't do something to one side of an equation, equal sign, I'm not willing to do to the other side. These will cancel, and I'll be left with x equals negative 1. So we're going to look at the original equation, and our original equation was 2 times the absolute value of x plus 8 equals 14x, right? And we're going to check these. And we do that by plugging them in, right? Now, if I plug 4/3 in to that, I would have 2 times the absolute value of 4/3 plus 8 equals, I can't even remember what I was getting at there first. Equals, where's my question? 14x, right? That's like saying 8/3 plus 16 equals 14. Oh, this also is by 4/3, right? If I'm multiplying that, 14 times 4/3, 14 times 4 is, oh my God, 15 times 4 is 60, minus 4 is 56 thirds, and I just need to see if it checks. I can tell you right now, this side's going to check out. But this other side, when we plug it in, it's not going to check out. Another little trick, if I have 2 times the absolute value of 4/3 plus 8 equals 14 times 4/3, I can go ahead, I don't know if you can see that, and start by dividing both sides by 2 to get rid of that. And I would have 4/3 plus 8 equals 7 times 4/3. Absolute value again. And what we're going to wind up with on this side is extraneous. We're going to wind up with 2 times the absolute value of 7 on this side, and the other one will, oh, I don't know why I'm putting in 4/3. That's why I'm screwing it up. I'm supposed to be putting in -1. Hold on, let me slide up another piece of paper to make this a little less confusing. Here, I'm plugging in -1 for my x. So if I have 2 times the absolute value of x plus 8 equals 14x, right? And we're going to plug in -1 for x. We're going to have 2 times the absolute value of 7 equals -14. Can you see where we might have something extraneous going on here? We divide this by 2, we divide this by 2, and we get the absolute value of 7 equals -7, and it cannot equal something negative. So this would be extraneous, right? So our only actual solution to this is x equals 4/3. Sorry I got sloppy at the end. If you have any questions, just hit me up. We can go into a meet or whatever.